I was paying $250 every single month for financial advice I barely understood. And the strangest part, I still felt confused about my money. Have you ever had that feeling where you are doing everything right, but your bank account doesn't reflect it? You've got savings somewhere, a retirement account you don't fully check, bills that seem to creep up, and every now and then a quiet thought in the back of your mind. Am I actually okay? I remember sitting at my kitchen table one Tuesday morning, coffee getting cold, spreadsheet open, my advisor's last email staring back at me. Words like rebalancing, diversification, long-term positioning, it all sounded important, but it didn't feel personal. And I kept thinking, I'm over 50. Shouldn't this feel clearer by now? Now, don't get me wrong, my advisor was a good person, professional, polite, always on time for our quarterly calls. But those calls lasted maybe 30 minutes, and somehow they cost me nearly $3,000 a year. 3,000. Let that sit for a second. What was I really getting for that? Because when I needed quick answers, like whether I could afford a small trip or how much I should safely withdraw each month, I didn't have anyone on demand. I had to wait, schedule, pay, and sometimes still leave with more questions than answers. Be honest, does any of this sound familiar? That's when something unexpected happened. A friend of mine, Mark, he's 62, recently retired, mentioned he'd stopped using his financial advisor entirely. I thought he was joking, but he said, I'm using AI now. AI. I'll be honest, my first reaction wasn't excitement, it was skepticism. You're trusting a chatbot with your retirement? But then he showed me something, not theory, not hype, actual numbers. A simple system he was using every week to track spending, plan withdrawals, and even stress test his savings. And what caught my attention wasn't just the convenience, it was the cost. $0. So I made a decision. For the next 60 days, I was going to replace my $250 a month financial advisor with AI. Same questions, same goals, same real-life decisions. Could I actually trust it? Would it save me time? Or would it create more confusion? And most importantly, would my money situation improve or quietly get worse? Because here's the truth no one talks about. After 50, mistakes hit harder. There's less time to recover, less room for guesswork. So this wasn't just a tech experiment, this was personal. Before I walk you through exactly what I did, you need to understand why the old way costs so much. Before I walk you through what I actually did, you need to understand what you're paying for with a traditional financial advisor. Because it's not just advice, it's a bundle. Most advisors are doing four main things behind the scenes. First, they help you organize your accounts, your savings, retirement funds, maybe a pension, maybe social security timing. Second, they create a plan, usually based on your age, risk tolerance, and how long your money needs to last. Third, they adjust investments over time, what they call rebalancing. And fourth, they answer your questions. That last one sounds simple, but it's actually where most of the value feels like it comes from. You're not just paying for spreadsheets, you're paying for reassurance. You're paying for someone to say, yes, you're on track, or no, you need to slow down your spending. And if you're over 50, that reassurance matters more than ever, because the questions get heavier. Can I retire in 5 years or 10? What happens if the market drops? Am I spending too much or not enough? Now here's the part most people don't realize. A lot of what advisors do is based on fairly standard formulas. They're using software, templates, projections, risk models. Yes, their experience matters. Yes, a good advisor can add real value. But much of the day-to-day work, the calculations, the what-if scenarios, the budget tracking, that's not magic, it's structured thinking. And that's exactly where AI has gotten surprisingly good. So instead of trying to replace a human advisor entirely, I focused on replacing the routine parts. The parts that happen every week, every month, the parts that cost time and money. Here's what I used. I kept it simple. No fancy setup, no expensive tools, just a standard AI chatbot, something like ChatGPT, and a basic spreadsheet. That's it. No paid financial software, no subscriptions. I wanted this to be realistic for someone on a fixed income. Now let me explain how I structured the experiment. 60 days, not a week, not a quick test. 2 full months of real decisions. And I set very clear rules. Rule number 1. I would ask the AI the same types of questions I would normally ask my advisor. Things like, how much can I safely withdraw this month? Am I overspending based on my current balance? What happens if my expenses increase by 10%? Rule number 2. I would not make any major investment changes without double-checking with a licensed professional. This is important. AI is a tool, not a legal or financial authority. I wasn't going to risk my retirement on blind trust. But I would let AI guide my day-to-day thinking. Rule number 3. I would track everything. Every dollar spent, every suggestion, every moment of confusion. Because I didn't just want to know if AI felt helpful. I wanted to see if it actually changed my behavior. And rule number 4. Honesty. If it failed, I would say it failed. If it saved me money, I would show how. No hype, no pretending. Now here's what surprised me before I even started. When I compared my last few advisor reports, most of the information was already based on numbers I had. My income, my expenses, my savings balance. In other words, the raw data was mine. The advisor was interpreting it. So the real question became, could AI help me interpret my own numbers in a way that was clear, fast, and actually useful? Because let's be honest, clarity is what most people over 50 are really paying for. Not complexity, not jargon. Clarity. Something that answers the question directly, without making you feel like you need a finance degree. So I sat down that first morning, opened my laptop, typed in my first prompt, and it was almost embarrassingly simple. I'm 58 years old. Here's my monthly income, expenses, and savings. Can you help me understand if I'm on track? No special language, no technical setup, just a real question from a real person. And what came back was not what I expected. But before we get into what actually happened during those 60 days, the wins, the mistakes, and the moments that genuinely surprised me, you need to see exactly how I used it day to day. The first thing I noticed was how fast everything became. Not financial advisor fast. Not schedule a call next Thursday fast. Instant. I would type a question, and within seconds I had an answer I could actually read, think about, and respond to. That changed my behavior almost immediately. Instead of letting questions pile up in my head, I started asking them in real time. Standing in the grocery store, looking at the $60 cart that used to be $40, I'd pull out my phone and ask, based on my current monthly plan, am I overspending on food this week? At home, late in the evening, I'd ask, if I keep spending at this rate, how much will I withdraw this month compared to my safe limit? And here's what surprised me. The answers weren't just numbers, they were explanations. Simple, step by step, no jargon, almost like someone sitting across from you, actually trying to make sure you understand. Now, I'll show you exactly how I used it. Every Sunday morning I had a routine. Coffee, quiet house, laptop open. I'd update a very basic spreadsheet, nothing fancy, just 4 columns: income, fixed expenses, variable spending, and total savings balance. Then I'd copy those numbers and paste them into the AI. And I'd use a prompt like this. Here's my current monthly situation. Based on this, how much can I safely spend for the rest of the month without putting pressure on my long-term savings? And it would break it down. Not just you can spend this much, but why. It would say something like, given your current withdrawal rate and remaining balance, you are within a conservative range, but reducing discretionary spending by 5 to 10% would create a stronger buffer. That word, buffer, came up a lot. Something my advisor had mentioned before, but never explained in a way that stuck. Now, here's where things got interesting. Around day 12, I made my first mistake. I trusted the answer a little too quickly. I asked, can I afford a weekend trip that costs about $600? The AI said yes. Based on my current numbers, it looked manageable, so I booked it. But what I didn't do was include a few irregular expenses that hadn't hit yet. Annual insurance, a medical bill, things that don't show up every week, but matter. And when those hit, I felt it, that tight feeling, not panic, but discomfort. And that was an important lesson. AI is only as good as what you tell it. If you leave things out, it won't magically fill in the gaps. After that, I adjusted. I created a second section in my weekly update called non-monthly expenses. Things like insurance, car maintenance, occasional healthcare costs, and I started including those in my prompts. The answers changed. They became more conservative, more realistic, less you can afford it, and more you can afford it, but here's the trade-off. That's when it started to feel useful, not just convenient. Now, let's talk about something I didn't expect at all, the emotional side. Money stress doesn't always show up as numbers. It shows up as hesitation, second guessing, that quiet voice that says, maybe I shouldn't spend this, just in case. And oddly enough, having instant access to clear explanations reduced that stress. Not completely, but noticeably. Instead of guessing, I could check. Instead of avoiding the numbers, I engaged with them more often. But it wasn't perfect. There were moments where the AI felt too neutral, too on the fence. I'd ask something like, should I reduce my monthly withdrawals right now? And the answer would be balanced, almost cautious. Here are the pros, here are the cons, which sounds helpful, but sometimes you just want a clearer direction. That's why I had to change how I asked questions. Instead of, what should I do? I started asking, what would a conservative financial plan suggest in this situation? That shift made a big difference. The answers became more aligned with the kind of advice I was used to getting. Now, another surprise. Time. I tracked how long I used to spend preparing for advisor meetings, gathering documents, writing down questions, waiting for replies. It added up. Over these 60 days, I probably saved at least 6 to 8 hours. Not because AI did everything for me, but because it removed friction. No scheduling, no waiting, no back and forth emails, just question, answer, adjust. And then there were the small habits that started to change. I checked my spending more often. I thought twice before impulse purchases. I understood my own numbers better. Not because someone told me to, but because it was easier. Now, I want to be clear about something. This wasn't some perfect system where everything suddenly worked. There were days I ignored it. Days I didn't update anything. Days I just didn't feel like thinking about money. And on those days, nothing improved. That didn't change. I didn't magically make me disciplined. But it made discipline simpler, more accessible. And over time, that started to add up. By the end of the first month, I noticed something subtle. I wasn't afraid of my finances anymore. Not completely comfortable, but not avoiding them either. And that shift alone was worth paying attention to. Because what happened next, in the final 30 days, is where the real results showed up. And some of them I didn't expect at all. By the end of the 60 days, I stopped thinking of this as an experiment. It just became how I handle my money. And the results? They weren't dramatic in a flashy, overnight way. They were quiet, but very real. First, the obvious one. I saved $500. 2 months, no advisor fee. That's straightforward. But that's not the part that mattered most. What mattered was what changed underneath. During those 60 days, my monthly spending dropped by about 8%. Not because I forced myself to cut everything. Not because I followed some strict budget. But because I finally understood where my money was going in real time. And when you understand something clearly, you naturally adjust. You pause before unnecessary purchases. You rethink small habits that add up. You make decisions with a little more intention. Now, here's something I didn't expect. My confidence improved. Not in a "I've got everything figured out" way, but in a calm, steady way. The kind where you can look at your numbers and not feel that knot in your stomach. The kind where you can answer your own question before asking someone else. That's powerful, especially after 50, because at this stage, it's not just about growing money, it's about protecting it, stretching it, making it last. And for that, clarity matters more than complexity. Now, let's talk about who this actually works for. If you're someone who wants constant reassurance from a human, someone to call, someone to guide every major move, this might feel incomplete. If you're dealing with complex investments, tax strategies, or big financial transitions, you still need a licensed professional, no question. And I didn't stop believing that. In fact, I still think there's a place for a good advisor, especially for big decisions. But for day-to-day awareness, for weekly check-ins, for simple planning and what-if scenarios, AI handled that surprisingly well. Now, who is this perfect for? If you're over 50, managing your own retirement planning, trying to make sense of fixed income, savings and spending, this can be a powerful tool, especially if you've ever felt like you're paying for advice, but not really understanding it. Especially if you've ever delayed asking a question because it felt too small to schedule a call. Because with this, no question is too small. You can ask 10 questions in a day if you want, and that changes how you learn. Now, let's be honest about the limitations. AI does not know your full life. It does not see the full picture unless you provide it. It cannot replace legal, tax, or licensed financial advice, and it definitely should not be used to make major investment decisions without verification. This is important. What I'm sharing here is my personal experience. It is not medical advice, it is not legal advice, and it is not individualized financial advice. It's simply what happened when I replaced one part of my financial routine with a tool that helped me think more clearly. That's it. Now, here's the most important takeaway. The value wasn't just in saving money. It was in removing friction, removing hesitation, making it easier to engage with my own finances consistently. Because consistency is what actually moves the needle over time. Not one perfect decision, not one big adjustment, but small repeated awareness. And that's what this gave me. So if you are curious, here's a simple place to start. Take your last month of income and expenses. Write them down. Open an AI chatbot and ask one honest question. Based on this, what should I be paying attention to? Don't overthink it. Don't try to be perfect. Just start. Because the biggest shift I experienced didn't come from the tool itself. It came from finally looking at my money without avoiding it. And once you do that, everything else gets a little clearer. Not perfect, but clearer. And sometimes that's exactly what you need.